Alex Pereira just systematically dismantled Khalil Rountree after losing the first 2 rounds. He reminded the world why he's one of the most dangerous strikers on planet Earth. But Khalil Rountree also reminded everybody that this wasn't a gimme fight. That even though he was ranked 8th, he was one of the more dangerous guys in the division because he had some nice clean shots and he had his own moments of success. My name is Angelo. This is We Want Picks, and I'm going to recap the entire UFC 307 fight card. Before we talk about the fights, let's talk about the bets. I had a wildly successful night. I had a very good night. I gave you 29% return on your investment for all of my bets. I went 11-1 in picks, and the only pick I missed was Raquel Pennington, and she won that fight. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but she got screwed. There were a couple of sketchy decisions, but none sketchier than that one. Overall, this was a phenomenal night. If you're a premium member, you're welcome. If you're not, I don't know what the hell else you need. Look at the bets that you got. And it's not just like, oh, Angelo is too conservative. Really? Because I got Court McGee at plus 195. I bet Roman Dolidze at plus 141. I bet Roman Dolidze inside the distance decision no action at plus 215. I went nuts with the plus money bets this week. The safety parlay hit. Overall, it was a great night, and it would have been an even better night if Raquel Pennington didn't get absolutely screwed. The UFC Vegas 98 picks, bets, tools, and everything else are up right now, this minute. You can unlock all of that. It's only $10 a month. Go to WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. We do a lot, including fantasy. Here are the actual results from the DraftKings ownership projections. We quite literally had the best ownership projections on planet Earth. You can see each column is a different competitor in this space. That includes Osimo, the Roto Grinders, Skotaz, all of the giant DFS companies on the planet, and then us for $10. And we still somehow had the best ownership projection on the planet. This is included in your membership, as are the tools like the data analyzer where you can do your own research. You can do your own tape study. But let's go ahead and break down the fights. It was a good fight card overall. It wasn't great, and it honestly kind of started, I don't want to say slow, because this fight was a huge underdog win for me, but it didn't start wildly exciting. I don't know what it was, because I'm about to recap a couple fights in a row that were exciting, but it just didn't feel like this monster pay-per-view event. But it ended up going pretty well. Nice main event, good come from behind victory there, but we'll start at the bottom, work our way to the top. There are chapters in this video. If you don't care about these fights, just check out the chapters and fly yourself to the moon. We opened up with Court McGee finishing Tim Means. I picked Court McGee. I was all over Court McGee. Everybody hated that pick. I don't know why, because the line was moving. I got him at plus 195 because I do my research and my bets typically a week or 2 weeks ahead of time. So I got him at plus 195, and the line was tightening, which meant like, okay, other people see it the way I see it. But according to the comments section in the live chat, people were just like, dirty bird, dirty bird, dirty bird. But this is exactly what I thought it would be. Court McGee is always in phenomenal shape. He's not afraid of a fight. And as long as his chin is there, which you don't know, he's going to come forward, he's going to grind, get to the ground, and work. I did not see a submission coming, let alone, you see this picture? This is right before the finish. This is not under the chin. This is not on the neck. This was literally a crank. They talked about he's a steel welder or some shit like that, and he's got man hands, and he has a man grip. And that manly grip just literally squeezed Tim Means that he couldn't handle it anymore, and he tapped. He didn't go unconscious. It's not that he couldn't breathe. He literally couldn't handle the pressure. That's how tough and what a tight squeeze Court McGee has. Court McGee looked good for a 40-something-year-old man. He said he has no plans to stop anytime soon. Joe wanted to remind us over and over and over and over again that Court McGee had a surgery, which really helped him for this camp and helped him in the future. So great. I'm happy that that went well for him. I'm happy that I hit this bet, and I'm happy that Court McGee was able to pull this off. Then we had the first sign that things might be a little weird on the judges' scorecards. This was the fight where we were like, uh-oh, are we in another country? Because these didn't feel like American scorecards. These felt like a regional pay-per-view in a country that doesn't get events very often kind of scorecard. But we go to Salt Lake City every year. So the fact that the Salt Lake City Commission had multiple blunders, there was a couple of weirdo scorecards, and a wild reffing situation that we'll talk about in a couple fights. But this was a weird scorecard. This was a weird decision. We had Carla Esparza taking on Tecia Pennington, formerly Tecia Torres. Carla Esparza was getting pieced up early. It looked like she had never thrown a punch in her life. Her striking looked worse than it has ever looked before. It was absolutely flat out, without question, horrendous striking. It was terrible striking. So much so that I was nervous that Tecia was going to finish her. I was like, oh my God, the over 2.5 isn't going to hit. There goes the safety parlay. And then Carla lucked her way into a takedown. Like, okay. All right. Turns out when she gets a takedown, it's because Tecia overextends herself. And then when she gets on top, Tecia can do nothing. Tecia and her wife, which we will talk about in a little bit, have nothing to offer off their back. When they get taken down, they literally have nothing to offer. There was no escape. There was no scramble. There wasn't any threatening. It was literally just stay safe, don't get choked. Carla Esparza got on top, ended up doing pretty well. First round was close. But okay, maybe you want to give it to Carla. I don't know. That was a very close round. Second round, a little more the same. Except Tecia gets taken down again a little early. She's rushing forward, a little too aggressive. Boom, taken down. All right, that's a problem. Starting to be a little problematic here. Third round. Tecia takes over the third round. 90% of that third round, Ticia's piecing her up. Ticia's having success. But at the very last, 30 seconds, she ends up on the ground, eats a few elbows, fight's over. I would have scored this a 29-28 for Carla. That's how I would have scored it. It seemed like Carla won 2 of the rounds. Tecia was able to steal a round. She got that third round. She had success striking, did pretty well. Ultimately, at the end, there was the scramble, but she won enough of the round that the last 30 seconds didn't matter. Unfortunately, this is how the judges saw it. One judge, Dan Furse, hopefully we never see that name again. One judge thought that Tecia Pennington won all 3 rounds, and that is an absurd scorecard. Like, that is an insane scorecard that makes no sense. That makes no sense at all. But it's not even the only ridiculous score on these scorecards. Sal D'Amato saying that the third round went to Carla didn't make any sense either. Carla didn't win that third round. She had 30 seconds of success at the end of the round. That doesn't win you the round. 30 seconds of success doesn't trump 4.5 minutes of success. So this was the first sign that things are not going to go well. And in this fight, like, it wasn't the most egregious decision we have ever seen. But I felt like the wrong person won. And I was fine. Like, I didn't bet on Tecia, but I picked her. So, like, fine. Maybe I'll pick myself a perfect card. But the judges went ahead and screwed me anyway. This did feel like, and if you see the heading here, a karma decision. A lot of people feel that Tecia Pennington was screwed in her last decision, in her last fight. They think that she was screwed against Tabitha Ricci. So the MMA god said, you know what? Here's another one. Who cares if Carla wins? She's retiring. She's going to get her video, her swan song. 2-time world champion, first champion ever. She made her money, did all the things. She's out of here. We'll give you this win. That's what this felt like, and sometimes that's okay. This wasn't the worst decision we've seen, but it definitely set the tone for some weird things to come. Then we had Ryan Spann promising to be more consistent after submitting Ovince Preux. But it's a very typical Ryan Spann submission. If you look at his record, he has more submissions than he does knockouts. And you would think, oh, he must be nasty at wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Not really. He snatches things up, but he gets people rocked. You are absolutely bobbling, can't stand up straight, about to fall over before he snatches things up. And that's what we had here. He moved forward. He was landing clean. He absolutely blasted Ovince Preux. Ovince Preux was wobble, shoots a takedown. Ryan Spann snatches the neck and gets it done. That's what happened here. He got the submission. It was pretty quick. Nothing crazy. We're under 2 minutes. And then Ryan Spann got on the microphone and said, I promise I'm going to be more consistent. And that's always been the knock on him because he's massive physically. He's got power in his hands. We've seen him be able to snatch things up. We've seen him be able to pull off submissions. So it has always been his consistency. And he's promising us that he will be even more consistent going forward. So I am looking forward to it because this division needs more life. Alex Pereira just smoked everybody in the top 5 except Ankalaev. Ankalaev fights in a month or 2 months. If that doesn't go well, who does Alex have left to fight? He's got to move up a division to get some competition. So we need to get some new blood in here. We need to get some wins. We need to start building up the rest of the division because Alex has run through the top 5, and Ryan Spann's the exact type of guy that if he hits a streak and if he matures and his early 30s are really where he hits his prime, all of a sudden Ryan Spann's going to do something. He's got all the physical tools. He's got all the skill. It's just a matter of doing the right things when he's supposed to. Then we had what might have been the worst refereed fight we've ever seen. And this isn't the fighter's fault. People were booing Cesar Almeida. Do not boo Cesar Almeida. This is not his fault. It is up to the referee to control the action, to control the cage, control the fighters, dole out penalties if they need to. And if you didn't see the fight, well, here's what happened. You are looking at an actual image of Ihor Pereira covering his eye because he got poked in the eye for the 4th time in this fight. A lot of it has to do with Cesar Almeida's stance. He's here. His fingers are wide open. He's here. He's pushing your face. Ihor did some of this shit to himself, shooting takedowns. You're trying to shoot takedowns. You're trying to close the distance. Well, Cesar Almeida's pushing your face. And the occasional finger went in there. He also punched Ihor Pereira in the nuts. So Ihor Pereira, over the course of a couple of rounds, was punched in the nuts and poked in the eye 4 times. The reason this referee absolutely fumbled the bag is because there were no warnings. There was no penalty. There were no consequences for poking the eye. And on top of that, there were several times where Ihor Pereira said, I've been poked in the eye. Like this close. This referee is this close. Look at him staring. And he's like, nah, I didn't see it. No, it didn't happen. And you know what? Maybe the first time you want to be like, I don't trust this guy. But then there were confirmed eye pokes that everybody saw. It was on the replay. Everybody saw it. The action was stopped the whole 9. And then even after the confirmed eye pokes, Ihor Pereira would be like, I got poked in the eye again. And the referee was like, no, you didn't. Keep fighting. He had absolutely no control whatsoever, fumbled the bag multiple times over. Then Ihor Pereira says, well, I need to become a Nurmagomedov. I'm not doing well enough on the feet. I have to shoot takedowns. Fine, do what you got to do. Try to win this fight. Didn't really work. He had a takedown. Cesar would scoop back, pop up. Second round, shoots a takedown. Cesar gets a guillotine, ends up in a mounted guillotine. Looks like he's going to finish it. So he had a little bit of success shooting here or there, but not enough. Then he's getting tired. So now we're in the 3rd round. Ihor Pereira is exhausted. He can't shoot real takedowns. So he's holding Cesar Almeida against the cage. And when I say holding against the cage, I mean he pushed Cesar Almeida to the cage. Cesar's back was on the cage, literally. No Angelo exaggeration. Literally, his back against the cage 5 seconds before the referee's like, you better work. You better work. Boom, separated him. And he did that, I believe, 3 times. To the point where this comment here is in quotes because I think it was Daniel Cormier that said we're reffing at elevation, meaning the mistakes that are being made are insane right now. They were literally laughing at how crazy that situation was. Actually, Daniel Cormier was laughing. John Anik seemed a little more serious than I thought he would be. He was legit furious, yelling, stop separating them to the referee. It was a bizarre situation. They said this was the ref's last fight of the night. They said it in a way that implied it was already his last fight of the night, but maybe they got word in the ear they're pulling this dude and he's done. But it was a bad reffing situation because I can understand. Listen, reffing's very, very hard. If you're a judge and you screw up, you're a complete moron because you had time to digest everything you saw. You watch a 5-minute round. You're watching the fights. You're paying attention. Then you have a full minute, 60 seconds to think about what you saw. Write down a score and then reset. A referee has to make a decision instantly. He sees something, stop. Instant. And if he makes a mistake, lots of situations can't be undone. If you call a fight because you thought somebody tapped, you can't undo it. They just make it a no contest and run the fight back at a different date. But this wasn't that. He had multiple times to correct the action going forward. He had multiple times to make better decisions going forward, and he didn't. Continue to make the same mistake over and over and over again. This guy is terrible at his job. Listen, not everybody's good at their job. How many fighters do we see that suck at theirs? Well, referees do too. Not everybody is good at their job. This guy needs a new job. And then we had Alexander Hernandez, who potentially needed a new job coming into this fight. He was 1-4 in his last 5 heading into this fight. 2-fight skid. If he lost this fight, that had to have been it for him. That had to have been it for him. But he was able to squeak out a win. But before we talk about how Alex won, let me talk about the line movement. It was weird. It wasn't James Krause weird, but it was weird. Alexander Hernandez opened at a -190 favorite. Almost instantly became a -200 favorite. If you don't know betting odds, he's basically a 2-1 favorite. And that was pretty steady all week long. Little drop here and there down to 185, a little back up. Pretty steady the whole week. Even after weigh-ins, it was pretty steady. A little bit of a dip, but nothing crazy. And then all of a sudden today, a couple of hours before the fights, not only does the line bottom out, but Alexander Hernandez went all the way to underdog. He went from a -200 favorite to an underdog. And we've seen line movement like that before. But it is not often that happens in one day. It typically happens over the course of a few weeks. Or it flips instantly. If it happens in one day, it's the first day the line comes out, the bookies got it wrong, the money comes in, the line flips. But for it to happen on fight day is a weird situation. Jacob was sending me text at about 8 o'clock in the morning where Alexander Hernandez went all the way from -200-ish to -130. And I was like, boy, any lower than this, I'm going to bet him. And then right before the fights, he was plus money. That situation was bizarre. Ultimately, he won. So it wasn't like a James Krause situation. If you don't know what I'm referring to there, James Krause ran a very successful gym. He had a bunch of fighters in that gym. One of those fighters on fight night went from being a humongous favorite to the other side, line taken off. Turns out that guy was fighting injured. He ended up getting finished in the first round. And it was a very sketchy situation. And literally the feds got involved saying, you knew the outcome. You knew he was injured. You bet money or you told somebody to bet money. They're still investigating it. All of this is alleged. But it was a very sketchy situation to the point where the UFC had to add policies about who can bet on fights, who can't bet on fights. He no longer has a license to coach or corner anybody. The UFC said any fighters that train with him will no longer be allowed in the UFC. It was a bad situation. This line had similar movement, but no nefarious outcomes. So it must have been the public moving it. And boy, do some of those people feel stupid because Alexander Hernandez won this fight. It was a correct decision. He won this fight. It was a split decision. I think Alex won the fight. I think he won the first 2 rounds, lost the 3rd round. Pretty clear win for Alexander Hernandez. He was just a little faster, a little cleaner, a little sharper. He was the better fighter here. Austin Hubbard gets some leeway because of just forward pressure. He just moves forward like the Terminator. He's eating shots, he's throwing, he's eating shots, he's throwing. And he does eat some big shots because he got cracked a few times and just kept moving forward. So lots of credit to Austin Hubbard for being as tough as he is. Credit to Alexander Hernandez for just being exactly who he always has been. Wildly fast and athletic and can piece things together. Did he look improved? Not really. Did he look bad? No, not really. He looked like Alexander Hernandez. There wasn't a situation for him to make a bad decision, so he didn't make any bad decisions. Then we had a very gritty fight. Iasmin Lucindo taking on Marina Rodriguez. And this looks like she's kissing her. She's not. She's digging her chin into her eye sockets to the point where she got yelled at. And the referee separated him, said, you can't do that. It's almost like eye gouging, but with your chin. This was another really close split decision. We had a bunch of split decisions on this card. And again, not every single scorecard made sense. Not every single judge did what they were supposed to do. But I do think the correct person won this fight as well. I think Alexander won, and he should have. Iasmin Lucindo won, and she should have. But this was a very close fight. Marina controlled the striking, as we expected her to. And if it got to the ground, or when it got to the ground, Iasmin controlled that. It was a grinding type fight. Iasmin Lucindo looked good. She didn't look great. But keep in mind, she went from completely unranked to fighting the number 6 person on planet Earth, and she ground out a win. This was not dominant. This was not easy. She was in trouble. She got pieced up. She got hit, but she kept moving forward. She kept grinding. Cardio did not become an issue. And I could actually say that as a whole, there weren't really any fights where cardio was clearly the issue. We saw some people get tired in the 3rd round, but it looked like normal third round tired. It didn't look like elevation tired. So overall, elevation didn't seem to be a factor on this card. Iasmin Lucindo certainly didn't seem to have too many issues. If she got the takedown, she looked good doing it. And it's a shame because Marina Rodriguez is a good striker. She's still good. She's getting a little older. I think she's 37, but she's still good. She was controlling the strikers. She just can't defend the takedowns. And if you can't defend the takedowns, you better be able to get up. And if you can't get up or defend the takedowns, you're kind of screwed. And that's sort of what happened here. Marina Rodriguez wasn't a complete fish out of water, didn't completely shit the bed, but she didn't win this fight. Iasmin Lucindo won this fight. It shouldn't be controversial. I am curious to see what happens to both of them next. Marina still has some life in her. She could still win some fights at this level. And Iasmin Lucindo, top 10. Let's see what they do next for her. Let's see who she's going to fight next, because from here on out, there's no more easy fights. There's nothing easy for her to do. So it's going to be a tough road moving forward, but Iasmin Lucindo is somebody who's improving rapidly, so let's see what they do next with her. Then we had the featured prelim of the evening, and if you only saw the headline, if you only saw the result and you saw Joaquin Buckley TKOs, he knocks out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, I assure you it is not what you think it was, because Wonderboy was winning this fight. Wonderboy looked exactly like Wonderboy. He didn't look a day over 20. He looked absolutely phenomenal. He was doing all the things he is known to do. He was stepping out, blasting Buckley on his way in. Buckley was doing everything that he's known to do, plus some wrestling. He was charging in wild, throwing huge bombs, but he was missing because Wonderboy, A, has phenomenal defense, and B, is absolutely humongous for this weight class. Buckley is coming down from 185, and he was still significantly smaller than Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. But Wonderboy had a whole bunch of success. Yeah, I think he won the first 2 rounds. If I'm scoring those first 2 rounds, he wins those first 2 rounds. He had the phenomenal defense. He had the great counter-striking. He had the great get-up game. He got taken down a bunch of times. This fight, in the first 30 seconds, Joaquin Buckley shoots a lightning-fast takedown, picks up Wonderboy, slams him down. Zero panic, no issues, full composure by Wonderboy. He pops up, and they're back at it. And that wasn't the only takedown. Joaquin Buckley had a whole bunch of success getting takedowns. He had no control, though, because Wonderboy's get-up game is so good. I think Stephen Wonderboy Thompson won the first 2 rounds. All he had to do was coast in the 3rd round, and he wasn't able to do it. And that's because Buckley, correctly so, said, I just need to get in his face. And that's what he did. He ran forward, got in his face, just throwing wild, throwing fast, just trying to create chaos using the speed advantage. And finally, he landed. Wonderboy was backed up against the cage. Buckley lands big. Wonderboy's head literally has nowhere to go, so it slams into the cage, and he just sort of crumbles down, and that's the end of that fight. I think they both look good. Wonderboy at 41 years old looked better than 80% of this division. It's crazy. It's crazy. If he was able to survive just a few more minutes, he was going to win a decision. Probably at 30-27. It's not as if Buckley was taking over that fight. He just landed really clean. So Wonderboy looked great. And I was the one coming into this week saying, Wonderboy and Aldo have to start looking old. I don't know if it's this card or not, but eventually they have to look old. And I wouldn't say that's yet. Obviously, the chin got tested and it sort of failed that test, but that was a bad strike. A big, powerful strike, and his head had nowhere to go. It slammed into the cage. And Buckley just doing Buckley things. He wasn't the more technical fighter, but he's lightning fast, hits hard, very athletic. We saw that he doesn't quit because he was getting pieced up, but he didn't get frustrated. He didn't quit on himself. He continued to move forward. I am very curious. Buckley did a great job. He called out not Tyron Woodley. That's the former world champion. He called out Kamaru Usman, saying, I'm not ready for a title shot yet. I just want one more. So he wants to test himself against the most recent welterweight GOAT. The true welterweight GOAT is George St. Pierre. The most recent welterweight GOAT is Tyron Woodley. So he called out Tyron Woodley. And I'm curious. I hope they do that fight. I'm curious to see what Buckley looks like against a former world champion. Then we had the main card opener, the battle of the judo black belts. We had 2-time Olympic judo gold medalist Kayla Harrison in her second fight in the UFC against fellow black belt, not quite an Olympian, but fellow judo black belt Ketlen Vieira. This fight was on this card for a reason. The co-main event was the title fight in this weight class. This was supposed to be setting up a title fight, but I don't know if Kayla did enough to earn the title shot. The good news for her, this division kind of sucks. It's pretty hollow. It's not great. There's a couple of women that have done pretty well that you could make an intelligent argument for. But for the most part, it's not a stacked division. That's how Juliana Pena got a title shot to begin with. The bad news, though, is that Kayla Harrison was a minus 1,200 favorite by the time this fight started. She was just minus 600 a week ago. And a lot of money came in. And she did dominate this fight. And it's funny because I'm in a group chat with a couple of neighbors, and one of them texted saying, did Kayla dominate the way that she was supposed to? Is this closer than it should be? And I said, no, it is not. It was not a close fight. But she also didn't dominate the way they thought she would. It wasn't close. She was never in any trouble. But it wasn't a complete dismantling. And that's hard to describe. Because it's like, well, wait, you just said she didn't dominate, but she did dominate. And yes, she won every minute of the 15-minute fight. Somehow a judge gave one round to Ketlen. And I don't know how you do that. I don't know what success Ketlen had to win any round in this fight. Literally have no idea what success she had. Because the fight was either on the ground or against the cage. 90% of it was against the cage. Because Kayla Harrison would come in, throw a bomb, and as she was throwing a bomb, she would use her free arm to try to grab a leg and work in a takedown. She didn't fully commit to those takedowns, but that's what she was doing. And ultimately, she didn't get 90% of them, and she would end up pushing Ketlen against the cage, and they would hang out against the cage. No meaningful striking on either side. The only 2 takedowns came from Kayla. When they were on the ground, the difference was shocking. I mean, when they were on the ground, Kayla Harrison dominated, went to whatever position she wanted, did whatever she wanted to do. To the point where in the first round, when she finally got that takedown, it's like, oh, she's going to finish her. Obviously, she didn't. It ended up going to a decision. And that's why it's a weird situation where it's like, you watch the fight, you said, that was pretty dominant, but boring as hell. That was not an exciting fight. It was a very boring fight. So now you're saying, did she earn a title shot? Well, there's other women in this division that have been busier, a little more exciting, a couple more wins. She only has 2 wins. Or does the UFC just say, listen, she's an Olympic gold medalist 2 times over, world champion multiple times over. Let's just get her to the belt, and then we'll have somebody compete for it after that. I don't know what they're going to do. And obviously, they're going to make whatever decision makes the most sense money-wise. Kayla Harrison being the UFC champion probably makes the most sense money-wise. Kayla versus Juliana Pena after the bickering at the press conference. There's your promo. Run it and go from there. My fear, though, and we'll talk about it when we get to the Pena fight, I mean, she's so inactive. And she definitely seems like she's just going to chill with this belt for a while. Meaning like, no, I'm not fighting anytime soon. And she's going to be Leon Edwards a full year before she defends the damn thing. Either way, I do think Kayla Harrison should get the next title shot, but there's intelligent arguments to be made that she shouldn't. And then we had a bizarre situation. The headline I have here is a little misleading, right? The headline says levels on the ground, sort of implying that Roman Dolidze dominated here. Frankly, he did. The striking was Kevin Holland's territory, right? He was pitter-patting, bing, 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 bing. He was touching. He was making Roman feel it. To the point where I was like, man, Roman's a little too hesitant. He's not closing distance. He's not doing what he's supposed to do. He's just going to let Kevin ping him up, run around, and he's going to lose a point striking decision. Then they end up on the ground, thankfully. And as soon as they got to the ground, Roman just went from position to position. Just dominated on the ground. Ultimately, the fight was won by TKO. And it wasn't Roman doing anything specific. That's why it's a bizarre situation. Roman dominated on the ground. He beat Kevin Holland to every single position. He beat Kevin Holland everywhere on the ground. Physically beat him. Just like raining down elbows. Just boom to his face. Full mount. Dominated on the ground. There were levels to the ground in this fight. But what looked like it happened is in a weird scramble, Kevin Holland either popped a rib or separated a rib. Something happened to his rib. You can see here in the picture on the left, which caused him in his corner to be like, I don't know if I can keep fighting. And his coach was like, then don't fight. Like, don't fight. And I get it. I don't know if you ever had a rib injury, but I have broken this bottom rib here before training. You know, it is hard to breathe. You can't take a deep breath without severe pain. So I get it. But I am going to double down on the fact that I bet on Roman Dolidze. I bet on him straight money line, and I bet him inside the distance decision, no action. And that was to cover me if Kevin Holland did just dance around the outside pitter-pat. And it looked like Roman should have been the favorite. And that's why I bet on him. I said, how is this guy not the favorite? We know Kevin Holland can't defend takedowns. And on the ground, Roman's going to be light years better. The one and only surprising thing here was they gave Roman his black belt. What the hell belt was Roman already? I knew he was a world champion. Did he not do that as a black belt? Is that information everybody knew except me? Because we watched him smoke other black belts. Look what he did to Jack Hermanson. Their one little ground scramble, he smoked Jack Hermanson on the ground. Wasn't even close. And I'm talking just the grappling, not the strikes. So for Roman to have been this successful up until this point and not be a black belt, holy shit. But he dominated. As soon as this fight got to the ground, he dominated. Then we had the second controversial decision of the night. And there'll be people that argue some of the other decisions were bullshit because they bet on the person and they're biased and whatever. I felt like every decision was correct, except I think Carla Esparza should have gotten that one. I actually think this decision was correct. But I totally understand the outrage that Jose Aldo won. I get it. And obviously I'm getting angry texts from Jacob. That decision was bullshit. It makes no sense. He's sending me all the stats. The fight basically came down to the third round. In the first round, Mario Batista won that first round. He was just busier, moving forward, having success. He won that first round. Close, but Mario won that first round. Second round was Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo very much won that second round. That was the clearest round. He did some real work on Mario Batista. Cut him open, beat him up real good. Mario Batista desperately shooting takedowns that of course he's not going to get. Merab didn't get him, you're not getting him. So Jose Aldo dominated that second round. Third round was another close one, but it just felt like Mario Batista. If you don't have the stats in front of you, if you don't have the stats and you're just watching the fight like I did, it felt like Mario Batista won that fight. Because it came down to that round. But if you do have the stats, and Jacob was kind enough to share them with me, the third round of the fight, Jose Aldo landed more significant strikes, more regular strikes, more strikes to the head. And the only difference was Mario Batista was the one moving forward, because we know Jose has no problem backing up, and Mario Batista was just hugging legs. So the question always becomes when we end up in situations like this is, does control time matter? I tend to be a yes kind of guy. You all tend to tell me no, control time means nothing. But to further that point, if I'm trying to take you down, if I attempted 10 takedowns and I get 0 of them, but over the course of attempting 10 takedowns, I hold you against the cage for a meaningful amount of time, what matters? Does it matter that I was able to hold you against the cage but not get takedowns? Or should it matter more that you were able to defend everything I was trying to do? And that'll be an age-old debate that'll never get solved. Frankly, you probably should get more credit for defending a takedown. Now, I don't think it's a 1-to-1. I don't think me getting one takedown is equivalent to you defending one takedown because getting one is far harder. But maybe 3-to-1. If you defend 3 takedowns and I get 1, that's equal. But Jose Aldo defended 100% of the takedowns. So if you're in the camp, that control time means nothing. And if Jose Aldo had the more effective striking, I mean, we're talking 17 strikes in an entire round. This wasn't a barn burner. Then maybe Jose Aldo won that round. I will say, this caption says the 10-9 must system. That is sort of the problem here because if you look at the fight as a whole and you scored as a whole, not by round, if you score the fight as a whole, who was closer to getting a finish? Who looked like they had the more meaningful, more impactful moments? Who was trying to work towards a finish? Then it's Jose Aldo's fight. Even in the third round late, he was moving forward, bombing, missing, but bombing. He threw an uppercut so hard, I thought he was going to fall backwards. He threw that so high. He was trying to win the fight. He had the more meaningful moments, mostly in the second round, but he had a couple in the third as well. But it's a 10-9 must system. You score every single round independently. You having a very clear second round is exactly equal to Mario barely winning the first. And that's probably a problem with the scoring system, but that is the scoring system we operate under. I do think Mario won the fight, but it's not a hill I'm going to die on. This is not a kicking and screaming Isaac Bulgarian type situation. Now, the co-main event is a hill I will die on. Juliana Pena did not win this fight. Raquel Pennington won this fight. This was the most clear split decision of the night. I don't know how this was a split, let alone a split in the wrong direction. This was a terrible decision. Objectively, a terrible decision. Juliana Pena did not win this fight. I'll walk you through the rounds. Raquel Pennington won the first round. It was very close. But she won the first round. It's everything I just said about the Jose Aldo fight. You can win a round by this much and still win the round. And she won it by this much with just a little more forward pressure. She seemed to have a little more success striking. Nothing else really happened. Second round comes. Juliana Pena gets Raquel Pennington to the ground, and Raquel Pennington is absolutely useless on the ground. Useless. Absolutely useless. Could do nothing. Couldn't get up. Couldn't get her hips out. No scramble. Nothing. Useless on the ground. That's Juliana's round. Third round. More of the same. Juliana Pena gets a takedown, and Raquel Pennington is more useless than she was in the round before that. She is now down 2-1. On her way to losing her title. Typically, when something like this happens, the momentum is in the wrong direction. But in the fourth round, Pennington came out and said, fuck this. And she was busy. She got in Juliana's face, threw the strikes, stayed in her face, bombing, making stuff happen, backing her up. Meaningful strikes that have Juliana rocked and in trouble. Fifth round comes out, more of the same. Staying in her face, bombing away, has her rocked, has her in trouble, creating situations that it's very clear that Raquel Pennington won the fourth and fifth round. The first round was close, but it was clear Raquel Pennington won the fourth and the fifth round. If we look at the scorecard, it was very clear that Raquel won the fourth and the fifth round. The problem is, two judges thought that Juliana Pena won the first 3 rounds. And it just did not feel that way. That first round felt like a Raquel Pennington round. It very clearly felt like a Raquel Pennington round. Now, obviously, it wasn't a dominant round, but it was clear that it was her round. We didn't have any meaningful grappling. There was no big, wild moment. What we had was Raquel Pennington moving forward, Juliana Pena backing up, Raquel Pennington landing the more meaningful strikes. Nothing crazy, but she was a little better. So I thought it was 3-2. I thought Raquel Pennington won. I didn't even think this was like up for debate. Jacob and I were celebrating through text message ahead of time before they called it. I was like, I'm about to pick a perfect card. I'm about to pick a perfect card. At this point, I was 10-0. 10-0. And then this fight lost. I am now 10-1 going into the main event. And the main event delivered. I got to tell you, the highs and lows of watching this main event. I went from Khalil Rountree's going to knock him out. He's going to knock him out. Look how sharp he is. Khalil Rountree was landing clean and fast. That left straight was clean. Just wham. And just boom. Snapping Alex's head back. Alex is very hittable. Crazy hittable, honestly. Dangerously hittable. It is crazy that Alex Pereira can be that hittable. The good news is he's not very chinny. Now, there was a moment, there was a forearm to the face kind of moment where Alex was throwing a kick and spinning at the same time, and then he just collapsed. Straight down collapsed when he popped right back up. closed his fist and started just marching forward and throwing. Marching forward and throwing. Two things. One, Alex Pereira won this fight with an accumulation of damage. He just systematically was breaking Khalil down. I thought he lost the first round. If not, it was very close. And I thought he lost the second round. Second round was much more clear. And then third round comes. Alex has a good round. Fourth round, completely took over. The second thing to note is Khalil's nose. It looked kind of like that before the fight started. So he must have been split wide open during camp and they let it heal because there was something up with the bridge of his nose before the fight started. And it didn't seem to have that much of an effect, but it must have been hurting him. My only critique here of Alex, like at this point, he is who he is. He's accomplished everything you could want to accomplish in kickboxing, everything you could want to accomplish in MMA. So I'm not going to critique his overall fact that his head is up and his hands are low style because it's working for him. What I didn't get, though, is why he wasn't just absolutely blasting Khalil's legs. Because he was having success early. He would kick it, and Khalil would completely stumble, couldn't put weight on it. It was a problem for him. And then you wouldn't see another leg kick from Alex for God knows how long. Another 4 or 5 minutes, wait till the next round, then another kick. So he didn't chop the tree as much as I thought he would. And that's really the only critique, because other than that, he doesn't panic. He doesn't freak out. He gets in a little bit of trouble. It doesn't matter. He just keeps marching forward with the determination of an absolute Terminator. I want all the great things for Poatan. I want him to move up to heavyweight. I want him to beat John Jones. I want him to be everything that you could ever want or need in this sport. I want Alex Pereira to go down as the greatest fighter that's ever lived. That's just what I want. And the last note here before I move on, the fans were actually great. There was a lot of booing, but they booed when it was appropriate. They booed the boring-ass cage control fights. They booed the winners of the bad split decisions. They went as far as booing Tecia Torres' dead grandmother. Tecia Torres is like, oh, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. My grandmother died of breast cancer. And they're like, boo! So they booed the fighters that won decisions that they didn't think should have won. They booed that ridiculous referee for separating people. They booed the Mario Batistas while he was just cage hugging. But they did not boo Khalil Rountree. They cheered for that son of a bitch like he won that fight. And I'm so glad they did, because Khalil went out there and fought a fight. He did everything he said he would do. He did not shoot takedowns. He did not do any weird nonsense. He went out there and he fought his ass off, and he had some success. He had more success against Poatan than basically anybody else has, outside of a close-eyes haymaker from Izzy. So I'm happy for Khalil. He definitely won over a ton of fans. Anybody who was hating on Khalil getting the title shot, talking about he didn't deserve it, if you didn't watch that and realize, holy shit, Khalil deserved this title shot, then you're just a closed-minded idiot. It's just that simple. He was winning that fight. Either way, this was a nice cap off to an okay pay-per-view. It did end nice and strong. But there's more fights next week. This is what I did this week. This is what you can unlock for next week. This is what you can unlock for next week. It's a whole suite of picks and tools and bets. We dominated UFC 307. We've dominated 6 of the last 7 cards. Hopefully it is more of the same going forward. Unlock everything you could ever want or need for UFC Vegas 98, UFC Vegas 99, UFC 308. The card after that, you're going to get 4 cards for $10. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member. It's $10 for a freaking month. You get all the tools, all the picks, all the bets, the breakdowns, and everything you can need, including an artificial intelligence that picks fights based solely off of historical data. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top.